Hi, Chumi. Welcome to another episode of Meet Me in My Corner. I am Dr. K and I'm your host. Okay, so by now, if you follow me on social media, you'll know that the cat is out the bag. Well, not really. The cat is still in the bag. The bun is in the oven. I am pregnant. Yay! Guys, this has been such a hard secret to keep. This is actually really why I've been quite far away from the podcast. I've been struggling with my appearance. I've been struggling with body dysmorphia. Because remember, I lost a whole lot of weight and then it's back on. It's cute, but it's quite kind of difficult. And I had a very difficult time in my first trimester. But we'll speak about that very soon. It's just exciting that now finally I can really show up as myself because this is now very authentic to me. I was struggling with coming here and not being able to fill in the other parts of my life and my story, which make up a big part of me right now, you know? But anyway, we're excited, obviously. It was definitely planned. I just didn't anticipate it would happen so soon. I thought we would go into, the planning stage for quite some time and enjoy the boogie. But no, God said, you wanted it, you got it. So we got it, right? So we are excited. And I think we're even more excited because we feel a little bit more financially stable with this child. Nia came in my first year of internship. I didn't even know where I was sitting in my career. The money was there, but it was during COVID. It was quite a weird time. So to have a child come in when I'm feeling more financially stable for me is exciting. I know the sentiment is shared with my husband. And, also bringing a child into this home. This home has kind of like, been a huge part of my story. And you'll understand as we actually go into the conversation what a big part this home has been in my story, right? But with Nia, we're not in a home of this size. We were in an apartment. So that was kind of like, tight, very, very tight. It was still great. I mean, we're still privileged to have that. However, we then found ourselves being forced to make a financial decision that we were not ready to make. So that we could get to this home. And there's also a lot of emotional issues or themes actually tied to that will bring this conversation home. So if you read the title, I don't know if you read the title or if you just listen to me. I hope you're just listening to me. We're talking about generational financial trauma. And I'm going to be quite anecdotal in this episode. And it was really brought on by a conversation that I listened to when I went to the season 7 She Owns a Success event that Momentum hosted earlier in August. So Ndando was there. She is the owner of a media company or media agency. I'm not completely correct. I might not be completely correct. Sorry. However, I know that she's working in the media space and she's quite successful. So it was her and her mother, and they were just talking about how generational money habits actually can get passed down, and how how you view money is greatly influenced by the people that come before you and what you saw growing up, which obviously makes sense. But I think that we need to have more of this conversation so we can really interrogate our financial habits and our motives with money, right? So let's talk about generational wealth versus generational financial trauma so we can bring that conversation to home, right? So generational wealth is something that we talk about all the time, especially when looking at like Nepo babies and all of that. We all wish we had generational wealth. Come on, don't you, Chummy? You do, But when we think about it from a very advanced level. So we think of it like, it's like someone inheriting like a huge business, like someone who's going to inherit Amazon one day or your Apple or so forth, right? However, actually, generational wealth is very simple. But for a lot of people that look like me, you've probably never actually experienced that. And maybe you might be the first to create generational wealth. And I am hoping to God, because of the financial independence that my husband and I are working towards, that we'll get to a point where our children will get to experience generational wealth and will not be dependent, and we won't be dependent on them, or they won't be dependent on us. So vice versa. So this is when assets or an inheritance has been passed down. So these assets can look like a home or a business. Business might be great, I won't lie. And you have items that have been given to you or inherited to you, even if it's a lump sum of money that helps you kickstart your life. And it's obviously great if you also don't have the financial dependence on you, what we call black tax, right? So this helps you to really go into life on a great footing. You know, you start from zero. You feel like you start from zero. Whereas a lot of us feel like we're starting from a minus. And that's where the financial trauma can sometimes come in, where there's a lack, right? Whether it's lack of assets, a lack of inheritance, or in actual fact, there's a debt. You feel like there's a debt. There's a tax on you, right? And you also carry a lot of emotional baggage related to this, okay? So I've experienced this, and not in a way that should, not in a way that I would criticize my parents. I really think that in actual fact, I'm at a better footing than what they were at. They started at a even further back of a minus, and they have stretched it to a certain degree. And I'm very grateful for what my parents have done. However, there's certain things that we did lack, or there were certain decisions that were made because of poor financial literacy that have affected how I look at money. And sometimes that's called that term is money trauma, which then forms your money mindset, right? So whether it's that you grew up in poverty or in a financially stable household, how your parents view and use money will shape your outlook. So you need to be aware of that, and be aware of that even as you being the example for your children, right? So let's speak a little bit more about this practically, right? So if you were raised in a home that lived paycheck to paycheck, or in my case where there was a shopping addiction, I really feel there was a huge shopping addiction, because I think my mother was trying to heal certain parts of her life where there was a lot of strife. She worked very hard to have the money that she had, and I think she wanted to validate that, and she wanted to validate that space. So you might not save as much, right? I find myself also doing the same. Instead of when I get money, instead of me looking at that money as an opportunity to invest and to grow that money, I always have a task or an object for that money. The only difference is I will definitely make sure that it is not beyond my means, because I know what it feels like to live beyond your means. I know what it feels like to be in a stressful environment because there's debt. And there's debt that is unpaid. Okay, I have debt, obviously, but that's debt that's unpaid. And that's why, in actual fact, I made that video a few years ago about having this home, because I was actually feeling very overwhelmed by the fact that, okay, I made this big decision of purchasing this home. And I actually want to get vulnerable with you guys in terms of why I purchased this home and why this specific home. It had to look a certain way. It had to have certain features. And that's because at some point in our lives, my mom was doing quite well, I think. My mom has always been very vulnerable with us in terms of her finances. At that point, she hadn't started the vulnerability, but she was newly divorced and so forth. Everything was going well, and then we had this opportunity of getting a home, of moving into a home, because we moved from our home into a flat for some time. It was always going to be a very short time, and then we moved around, like she was renting, and I think she wanted to really now own a home again. Okay. So we went looking for homes, and I remember it was her and I. We went looking for this home, and we found it. And it was a new development, very similar to the house that I have now. It's just the difference was like it was an orange home. I don't know why. A lot of houses are painted in orange. Wow. So random. But anyway, it was so exciting. And I remember the day that she told me that the bank confirmed it. Guys, it was both our win, And also in that year, she also got a new car, and it was the latest BMW. It was exciting. I still remember the smell of that leather. I will never, ever forget that. So I'm still working towards getting myself a nice car with leather seats, and I hope I can experience that leather smell again, But anyway, so we lived in this home, and it was, honestly, for me, it felt like I was in heaven. It felt like fantasy had come to life. Because here I was, I had this new bedroom. I've always had my bedroom. I don't want to make it seem like we really struggled. Never really, really struggled. But It was like an opportunity to now paint the room because she owns the home, it's not rented anymore. And I could decide all these things. And my mom was very excited about this home, just like how I am with my home now. And it was exciting. It was really exciting. I remember even having friends over, people being like, so like, moved that, oh, you've moved into this home, all of that. Really, honestly, everything that I've ever wanted. But unfortunately, things happened and we lost the home. We really did. And I will never forget that process. I'll never forget how that felt. And although my mom lessened the blow, if there's something I can commend my mom for, is the type of courage that she has as a person. I think when she looks at herself, she thinks of herself as a failure, but I think she succeeded in more ways than one. I think to put yourself out there and do what she had to do, especially as a single mom, coming from her background, is just success on its own. And I wish I could find ways to impart this to her, to explain to her how much she has moved me and how much she's motivated me to be the hustler that I am, because she was a hustler. And, I think because of that generation, I think the boomer generation don't like to talk to each other. But I was very blessed that she didn't keep me out of the conversation. So she told me everything that happened. I knew when it was going to happen. It's a process. I learned the word sequestration at a very young age. I know about ITC from a very young age, I might not have understood it that well then, but because of my mom's vulnerability and the honesty that she had with us, I was able to not be so traumatized by the experience. It really wasn't traumatizing. I can't say that to you. I can't say that, it felt like we're kicking and screaming, we're being evicted, nothing like that. She made sure everything was smooth. It was just this thing of, okay, a new reality has to be faced and you just have to accept it. And I could see how hard that was on her. It was not necessary for me to cry about it and to create more pressure on her, because I know she already felt like she didn't do enough. Whereas I feel like my mom did the most. Like, honestly, till this day, I think she did the most. And I wish, as I was trying to say, that she had people that she could speak to about this that are around her age group, so that they can be honest with each other. Because I know she's not the only one that's gone through this. She's not. When you speak to your friends and they tell you they situations, and they tell you how, like, I feel like my parents are like swimming in debt and they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to do anything about it, which causes actually more of the trauma. She didn't have that kind of mindset, but I think she thinks that she's the only person that has gone through this. It's so normal. It's actually so normal. However, we're working towards changing that. So going back to my house, why I bought it, right? And even why I bought it with very poor financial literacy was because I wanted to heal that side. I wanted to have that home again. I wanted to experience that again. My home is very similar to the house that we had. Very, very similar. In a complex, a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 2 bathrooms with a restroom, a powder room downstairs. Exactly the same. It's just there's certain tweaks to it. But honestly, when I drove into this place and when we chose this home, I know that I was driven by that. So that's why when I made that video, it was me actually sharing with you guys and telling you that, I'm not going to allow this to define me. So if I do fail at this, if we do get to a point and we say that we actually cannot afford this, we got into this like quite crazily. I didn't want to go through the isolation that I feel that my parents faced when they faced these kinds of challenges, which are normal. They're normal. I need to tell you that it's a very normal, and it's especially normal for us as Black people in South Africa. You need to understand that because of where we started and the amount of limitations that we have. The fact that we have such a thing as a Black tax, the fact that we have so much financial dependence on us is a big thing, But speaking about generational wealth, actually, something that my mom did for me that I will thank her for the rest of my life, even though some people would argue that no, but it is her job. Some parents don't do this. My mom made sure that I have no student loans to pay. So at least I didn't have that kind of debt to deal with. And medicine was actually quite an expensive course to pay for. So the fact that she took that on and she did her best, we did take a loan, but she paid it back. She never made it my responsibility. I mean, like, I don't know, like, how do you talk about success and not look at that, you know? Like, I wish I could give my mom all the flowers in the world. I wish I could make her see what I see in her. And it's a woman that really tried her hardest with very little, and she did a lot. And unfortunately, she did face a challenge or a stumbling block. You might hear Nia in the background. She's here. She's part of the generation. So it's actually quite great that she's actually hearing this conversation. Okay, and then another way you can look at it is maybe you grew up with parents that were quite frugal, right? I actually see this with Dumelo. So this is why it's so cool that we're in partnership, because his money mindset is completely different to mine. But it really supports me, and I feel like I support him. So because he grew up with very frugal parents, very financially, I would say financially, not strict, but very, I don't know what the word is, but quite responsible with money. No, but I don't want to use that word because I don't want to make it seem like the opposite is irresponsible, but quite strict. So let's just keep it at frugal, okay? And we know that frugality is motivated by the fear of losing money, right? So that living in that kind of a household can make you take away experiences from yourself. So you might find that you're an oversaver. So you're saving, but like you're not spending your money at all. You're not giving yourself the opportunity of having experiences because you're so afraid of losing money, right? So that's also something that you need to interrogate. Some people might think that's positive, but you're living life to live life, right? And money is supposed to help you live life and to have experiences. As much as it is important to save, and it is important to invest, and it is important to make sure that you have a financial advisor, I definitely will say that. That is one thing I got for myself very quickly in the first year of internship, and I'm so glad I did that because I feel a little bit more secure in where I'm standing, knowing that I have income protection, I have a funeral policy, I have a retirement annuity, and so forth. Those are things that I'm glad are not a foreign concept to me, right? So it is good if you have those things. If you're finding ways to, to lessen your interest on your bond because you're paying a lot more to it, that is good. That is really good. That is really good. However, you still need to give yourself an opportunity to live your life and spend some money to make yourself a little bit happy, to celebrate your success, right? Because when you they won't even understand it. I'm joking. You will teach them about that, right? But yeah, so that's my point. So you get those two different mindsets, right? But in actual fact, if you want to do a money personality quiz, so if you really want to interrogate your habits around money, you can actually do so. And Momentum has this offered by their financial advisors. So you would set up an appointment with a financial advisor, an accredited financial advisor that works with them, and they would do a money personality test with you. And this is part of their process in helping you out, which I think is really awesome because you then able to start to make informed decisions about your finances and moving on. But I also want to talk about investing. I need to say, guys, I'm not there yet. And this is actually something that also came out at the She Owns Her Success Season 7 workshop, where one of the speakers, Muhau, oh, guys, she moved me. Oh, my God, she moved me. She moved me. If you haven't watched, or if you were not there, please, you can check it out on YouTube, okay? You can check out the workshop on YouTube. I know it played on SABC3, but you probably have missed it by now. However, she spoke about how she compounded her bag, guys. Oh, it was sexy. Oh, just looking at this black woman, she's there, she's poised, she's humble. Oh, what's it? Humility like I told me. It's what go chilling. Oh, she was so great. She told us how she moved her. She's basically a funder, right? Not basically, she is a funder, and she's funded a lot of women-led businesses in Africa. Not South Africa, fella, Jimmy. No, honey, in Africa, okay? She's the biggest. Her business is one of the biggest. But she spoke about how she started with a certain amount of money and she compounded that by 54. That's crazy. That is crazy. When she was speaking about her numbers, my eyes were going like this. But the one sentiment that I took from her is that as women, we need to stop being fearful of being successful and rich. We need to want to be wealthy. She's like, being wealthy is important. Money helps you live your life better. So this thing of us trying to be humble, you don't apply for the job because you don't fit 90% of the criteria is ridiculous. If you're interested in a job, you know that you could possibly do it. You might not have the credentials. Try it out. Get into the interview. Let's see what can happen. Men do that all the time. Okay? Why? Because they're not fearful of being wealthy. They're not fearful of changing their financial standing. A lot of us women stay in jobs and we barely climb the ladder. We thinking we're climbing the ladder because we're being promoted maybe every 5 years. But when you look at your peers who are a lot more vengeful, who wanted the wealth, who are gatlejos, who, go to Momentum, she owns her success events, then you like to yourself, how? Why gatlejo? Yeah, she can drive this car, she can do this, da 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 da. I'm not saying compare yourself. Or why when Katla and I talk and she's honest with me about her salary and ours don't match at all. Like it's far. Because Katla played the game. She was not scared of being wealthy, And when I looked at that, she also then brought in the importance of investment and that we need to start having these kinds of financial conversations. So it's good. Protect your money. Save it. That's good. So a lot of us are actually there. Okay, we are starting to do that stuff. As I told you, I have a financial advisor, but I haven't started the investment game. And I'm still very afraid, which means that I'm still fearful of wealth. Because investing gives me an opportunity to actually play the money game and to possibly experience wealth, in some way. So that's something else I also want to put out there. And for a lot of us, because we don't have parents that did that, we don't know where to start. We don't know how to start. But I think if we continue having these kinds of conversations, if we continue interrogating our mindsets when it comes to money, if we are vulnerable in this space, something that my mom taught me, and I really think that my mom has set up my financial success and my financial freedom without her realizing, because she taught me not to be ashamed by money. Like, talk about it. So guys, anyone will tell you this, especially if you're my friend, I will definitely tell you if I can't afford something. I will never act, I get happy. I will never act like I can afford something when I can't afford it. I do not do that. Because get debt. Even debt from you as a friend, I don't want to be indebted to you. Get debt because I know what debt feels like. Even though it wasn't me going through it, I know what it feels like. It was scary. It was not a nice feeling. I could see the stress on my mom's face. So her experience has actually really strengthened and given me an opportunity to be more vigilant when it comes to how I use money. But as I said before, I need to do a lot more. I need to invest in some way. I need to start having those conversations. I want to say things like, do you want to crowdfund? I don't know, things like that. Like, oh, what's the stock doing? Just imagine me saying that. Okay, anyway, I can keep you here forever. You know me. I can talk forever. So Chomi, I hope after this conversation, you will either have a very healing conversation with a family member, maybe a parent, whoever raised you, whoever started your money code, who started the algorithm for you, okay? Because you're sitting in the algorithm right now, right? And you're now trying to figure it out so you can have that healing conversation or a conversation about gratitude. If you experience generational wealth, thank them. Appreciate them for what they did. If you also experience financial trauma or anything like that, thank them for what they could do, and what they couldn't do. Start the healing and start figuring out, is my approach to dealing with this trauma helping me gain financial success and financial freedom, or is it keeping me stuck in one place? you don't need to do so. Okay? Okay, Chummy. I'm done. I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Okay, the next episode we'll talk about the baby. We will. Okay, and the pregnancy. All right. Bye, Chummy. Have a good one.